Welcome to Be Inspired, your ultimate resource for finding inspiration and living consciously in a rapidly changing world. Welcome to Still Blooming, Conversations with the Artists. I'm Francesca Durham, curator for this group exhibition on view at the Art Gallery of Burlington from February 7th through to May 24th. This exhibition asks a question I've asked myself many times. What does it mean to still be blooming? And how do we keep creating beauty and meaning and community despite adversity? Over this episode series, I'm sitting down with each of the artists to hear their answers. And I'd like to start by saying thank you to our sponsor, the Halton Black History Awareness Society, for your generous support for our artists. Today, I'm thrilled to be in conversation with Amanda Tkaczyk. Her artwork in this exhibition is called True Say 2, Speak Up or Sit Down. Amanda, thank you so much for being here and part of this podcast series for Still Blooming.
Thank you, Francesca. I'm really excited to be a part of the exhibition and glad that we get to have this conversation as part of the living archive of the works.
And as you know, Amanda, there are 5 core questions in this mini deep dive interview. So are you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go. Question number 1 is more of a personal connection. What does the phrase still blooming mean to you personally? And how does your work in this exhibition embody that idea?
I spent quite a bit of time reflecting on what the phrase still blooming means. And because my other artistic practice is poetry, I decided to think through words that have alliteration. So I will recognize that the Still Blooming exhibition subtitle is Emerging in Radiance, Rooted in Resilience. And so when I reflect on what Still Blooming means to me, I think of 3 other R words, recognized, reflexive, and regenerative. So recognized, I think of still blooming as the state of blooming, and to bloom is to flourish, to arrive, to be seen. It draws up a cognitive experience of beauty. Reflexive in the fact that in the state of still blooming is to acknowledge a past, a present, and a possible future of what it means to bloom. And regenerative in the sense that still blooming, in my mind, there's a ... And it's an invitation for co-creation or for becoming. So in my piece, True Say 2, we're going to speak more about it, but it is a digital collage that features botanicals with 2 juxtaposing Afro-Caribbean phrases. And it also includes a technology interactive. And I think about this as a way of blending old and new forms of storytelling through visuals, text, and technology. Ultimately, with this piece and reflecting on the theme, still blooming as a concept to me is allowing us to give space to recognize what we know and what we don't know, reflecting on what we carry and what we choose to put down, and inviting others to be part of the regenerative possibilities of what we learn and share and grow with one another. So that's what still blooming means to me personally and how my work embodies that.
Fabulous. And as you mentioned, it does have this tech initiative added to it, which makes it fun, it makes it interactive. Moving on to the next question, more about the creative process. Can you walk us through the creation of your piece? What inspired it, and were there any surprising moments or even challenges in bringing this piece to life? Because the artwork itself challenges our fixed notions, or some of the fixed notions that we might have when it comes to good and bad and true and false, and I'll let you take it away from there.
Thank you. So last spring 2025, I had decided to delve deeper in my artistic practice because I've primarily been a self-taught artist, and I took a course with Suzanne Dodner from the School of Expressive Art Therapy. She is a Black arts facilitator, mentor, expressive arts therapist based in the Hamilton area. And as part of the coursework with her, we were told to develop a daily art practice. So I created many collages, drawings, poems, paintings, and I started to think deeply about other ways of art making as we explored, particularly focusing on Black art and representation and what art is in today's society. And so I decided as one activity that I would do on one of the days of daily art practice was gathering phrases of proverbs, sayings from African and Caribbean communities. This is something that I used to do in childhood as a young girl. I would read books of proverbs for fun. And so I thought, I'm going to do this as an activity of the day, and I'm going to consider that gathering as part of an art activity. And so through that, the repository of phrases that I collected that had meaning to me from my personal life and phrases I've either grown up with or were familiar from culture, that then evolved into the True Say series, which is a collection of works that juxtapose these sayings that have multiple meanings, multiple interpretations, multiple understandings, and allow us to think through, like you said, good, bad, true, false, what we hold on to, what we release. And as I thought about how I would extend what I've collected into a visual form, I knew I wanted to juxtapose it with flowers and what we call so-called weeds. So I'm going to extend my little story here about the creation of the piece, because that's just part one.
Okay.
It continues on in fall 2025, where I attended a series of artist development workshops hosted by the NIA Center for the Arts, which is a community for Black artists. Natia LeMay offered participants a portfolio critique review. And as a self-taught artist, this was my first time having any type of portfolio review. So I was very excited and curious how my work would be received. She had offered a critique that affirmed my practice and encouraged me to be more audacious in establishing my visual identity across my experimental performance art, my video work, and visual art. She had encouraged me that despite being multidisciplinary, that I should think about ways to make myself more visible as an artist. So for a visual brand or cue, so when someone looks at my art, whether it's live performance or visual art in a gallery or a video that's being screened, that they could see somehow a thread or a hint that says, yes, that is the work of Amanda Tkaczyk. We continue on. So I had this idea in my mind about how I could be more intentional about establishing a visual cue. When I was at a large art store in Guelph, Wyndham Art Supplies, and this was the first time I had been there as a quote-unquote professional practicing artist, I entered the space with new eyes, and I passed by a paper section, and I wasn't intentionally looking for anything related to this piece, but I had seen what jumped out to me as a nostalgic rattan/wicker paper style that caught my eye, and I knew immediately I wanted to integrate it somehow in the piece, but I wasn't sure where or how. So I sat with the feedback that Natia shared with me about being more audacious to put myself into the works, and I knew I wanted to be more vulnerable. It already is vulnerable when any Black artist puts Black culture out in spaces where we know it's going to be on display for viewers of a general audience. There's the risk of being not perceived correctly or misunderstood or being harmed, but that's the point of sharing. And so I thought, okay, how can I make myself even more vulnerable? So I went through my projects and gave myself permission to think through what are some themes that connect my work. And so I decided, based off of my other visual works and video and performance art, that I would add some sort of technology interactive, not to force it into the piece, but to sit with a recognition that I deserve to be seen as an artist who is allowed identity and allowed to tie things together. I decided to add in a QR code with green tape, which is another element that's been consistent in some of my visual works. And the QR code links to a video of my mom, which this is tricky to speak about, because the exhibition coincides with her birth month, and the opening of the exhibition is actually the 5-year anniversary of her passing. So it's very meaningful to me to have the opportunity to put a video of my mom in a gallery, but at the same time, it's actually obfuscated by that with her tan style paper, and it's covered up with the green tape. So there's this curiosity, I hope, for the audience about where does that QR code lead you. There's a moment of celebration for those who know what the video is, but there's also this opacity of being on display, but not necessarily for public consumption, which aligns very much with the themes of the text about speaking up or sitting down and balancing a time to be seen and a time to be secretive, a time to be visible and a time to not be visible. So all of this, going through the experience with Suzanne, reflecting on proverbs as an act of art making, getting the feedback from Natia and being open to that portfolio review, adding in the technology elements in a way that was authentic to me, and being able to add my mom in a hidden way into this artwork that at this point is the pinnacle of my arts career, and I'm very grateful. It's all very much aligned with the themes of Still Blooming, which is holding and releasing, learning and growing, being and becoming. And it's very much a moment in the art about privately declaring, hello, Mom, I miss you, and I am still blooming. So to the general audience, even if they don't know or read the wall text and understand that that's what it is, it still becomes a message of, is this something that you could see, but you cannot? That's the piece.
So if I could just take a minute to, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your personal story. I did not know that this would be coming through. I actually didn't realize that the QR code was going to link to something so personal. I think it is such a beautiful story. You have received some great advice to grow your practice, everything from Suzanne's information and her teachings on helping you to do that reflection on the Proverbs, to
Natia
LeMay for the portfolio review, which I'm sure was extremely helpful for you, between that and your own creativity and using that QR code and linking everything to such an important moment in your life that has changed you forever. It has also, as you say, you're saying hello to your mom, you're saying I miss you, and that you're still blooming. I can't thank you enough for sharing that. I'm sure that wasn't easy for you, so thank you.
Thank you for that.
Very excited for people to take a moment to walk through the exhibit and to take some time and sit with your piece for a bit. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into the botanical imagery that you're using as a language, because the exhibition itself explores how flowers and the botanical forms can be languages of survival, memory, as you have spoken to and are speaking to, and resistance. So what are your botanical forms saying? What story are they telling?
So I'm going to begin with a little personal note here. And I often joke that my personality is that of an indoor cat, which is ironic because I am allergic to cats.
Oh.
But the reason I mention this is because I am still developing my literacy and relationship with physical placemaking and botany. And this is something I'm aware of and actively trying to be more outside. And so through deepening my practice, I knew that I had an idea for the concept of the True Say series. As I mentioned, I had the collection of proverbs, but I wasn't sure what I would do with, or how I would create or share or celebrate them or bring them to public consciousness through my art. And so I knew that I wanted to do something with them. And I had this idea about the contradicting moments and pairing them up as how we can hold multiplicities of truth. And I thought about flowers and weeds and how the definition of a weed is more of an abstraction. It's a nuisance. In some places, certain botanical forms are considered like weeds, and in other forms, it's not. In some places, weeds are invasive, and that same plant in other places is not. And so I thought how interesting it is that there is no classified as a weed is not a universal definition. And also the politics of what gets called a weed. And so because I had thought about this, but as I mentioned, I don't have a strong literacy of botany, I gave myself permission to explore botanical forms, and I don't have to necessarily be an expert, but I could still learn and create from my learnings. And so in the Truth Day series, as I mentioned, contradictory or juxtaposing proverbs and sayings, and then matching them with flowers and weeds. So I specifically did research about different botanical forms that would be a meaningful combination for the pairs of proverbs and sayings. And so it was kind of a top-down approach to art making. So I knew I wanted to find flowers and weeds, so I did research on flowers and weeds, and whatever felt right for the piece became the forms. So in this piece specifically, it features the baby pink flowers are the peonies, and the magenta off pink is amaranth. So that's a combination of flower / weed. And we also, with the peony, we can think of it as delicate, desired. Peonies are something that require a lot of care and attention to grow. They're considered very beautiful and tender, delicate, as I mentioned. With amaranth, it is also, I didn't know this, again, I'm not an expert. I did the research as I was creating the art, but the amaranth, some types of amaranth are called pigweed, and they're I read about a food critic who called them irrepressible. So meaning that once they get in a place, they spread out widely and they never go away. And so amaranth is considered to be very resilient and pervasive. I thought that's a lovely combination to have these peonies that if you don't treat them exactly the right way, they won't bloom. And then amaranth, where if you get some unintentionally in the right area, it'll just spread and continue to grow all around. Now with this, the peony is admired and used for different rituals around the world for celebration. And amaranth, I didn't realize, again, until I did the research, but amaranth is also edible. So you can cook amaranth. And so again, it draws on this interesting notion that in some cases amaranth is considered a weed and something to get rid of, but in other cultures and traditions, amaranth is something you would cook. And so it's free food. So why wouldn't you want it growing in abundance? So I thought that this was an interesting layer that, it's just part of the overall piece about these contradictions of appreciating that which is delicate, beautiful, cared for, but also appreciating that which is everywhere, resilient, persistent, unfading. So with the botanical forms, in addition to them being present in the four corners and the center of the piece, because I am sharing two proverbs, the empty barrel makes the most noise, and closed mouths don't get fed, which we'll speak about momentarily. I don't have a preference at which one's right or wrong. I don't have a preference on which one's true or false. I don't have a preference or suggestion or which one you should believe or reject. The whole point of the piece is that I think that these two, at the surface, contradictory sayings should both be held and applied where necessary, and that we shouldn't reject the lessons from our culture or our ancestors or the past because we believe something that is different. And so, because I didn't want to introduce a hierarchy through the text, I also didn't want to introduce a hierarchy through the flowers. I wanted the botanical form of the peony and the amaranth to be omnidirectional. I didn't want one to be visually superior. So that is why the positions of them, they're shared and split amongst the colors. In the center, the position, it can be, and actually Francesca and I had some good moments where, it was not necessarily clear about the directionality of the piece. I take that as a compliment that my concept was very clear, that I intentionally created something that can be shown in any direction. I do have a preferred direction that's based off of what I imagine a balanced view of the peony and the amaranth throughout.
I mean, your botanical forms have a lot to say, and it's a very powerful visual, and I look forward to visitors' feedback from it. And it's just beautiful because you're not just asking us, but you're inviting us into the piece. So I do look forward to everybody seeing it. Now, let's just go on to my next question. There's so much that just came out of your botanical imagery as a language, but my next question is more around softness and power. And the exhibit repositions softness as sovereignty. And I'll just state here, because I don't think I've mentioned this in any of the other podcasts, that softness as sovereignty, meaning reclaiming tenderness and care and vulnerability as forms of power. So especially for people whose bodies in histories have been shaped by survival. So my question is, with the exhibition repositioning softness as sovereignty, challenging the idea that beauty or botanical imagery is merely decorative, how does your work speak to this tension between softness and strength?
I'm going to speak about the text that's on the piece.
Okay.
So the two phrases are empty barrels makes the most noise, and the other line is closed mouths don't get fed. These phrases, empty barrel makes the most noise, is a phrase that it alludes to liquor making, as I understand it, or things being transported, that if you knock on a barrel that is empty, it's going to be louder, and if it's full, it will be quieter. And so a person who makes a lot of noise probably might not be the most, respected or intelligent. I'll just say it plainly. Again, this is a proverb. Common understanding of that phrase is that if you are quiet, that's something that is more respected. We contrast this with the other phrase that's popular in contemporary society, is closed mouths don't get fed. This idea that you have to speak up if you want something. And we think about the visuals of baby birds getting fed in the nest. If you don't open your mouth, you're not going to survive. And either both empty barrel makes the most noise is a Afro-Caribbean proverb, and closed mouths don't get fed is a popular phrase in contemporary Black culture. And so we can think about what it means to think that people who speak the loudest might not be the brightest, as I'm trying to say it in a tough way,
Right.
versus speaking up and advocating for yourself. And I think my lack of precision and even explaining it alludes to how we have to navigate holding these two phrases or truths. When do you speak up versus when do you be quiet? When are you speaking up versus when are you holding on to privacy? When do you share versus when do you keep something for yourself? I think there's strength, going back to the question about softness as sovereignty, there's strength in silence. There's strength in speaking up. And with regard to the botanical imagery, as we just spoke about, both the peony and the amaranth are representations of value. The amaranth, as I mentioned, is edible, but does that mean it has more value than the peony? Who's to say? And so these ideas that we assign and we share and we co-create the value of text or botanical forms is something that I think a lot about in my wider scope of practice of meaning making and how we co-create our understanding of the world. And so my work speaks to this tension between softness and strength, again, because there's layers of visibility and invisibility what's public, what's private, and what we might have heard in the past versus what we are learning as we continue to bloom.
And you know, everything from the positioning of the images in your piece to the proverbs that you've chosen, there's so much to think about, and you've done such excellent research on what it means to still be blooming. I can't thank you enough, because I know a lot of time and attention has gone into every detail. Now I'm going to go on to my next question. If somebody is to encounter your work in this exhibition, whether it's in person or even if they were looking at the digital catalog, what do you hope the takeaway will be for them? What do you want people to feel and understand when they are looking and engaging with your piece?
So, as I mentioned at the top, my primary art practice before expanding my professional arts career now, it was in poetry. In my career, I've been a technology professional in consulting as well as a teacher. And so I'm going to put a button on this and finish it with a bullet list of 5 points, okay? Mm-hmm. And there's symmetry in it. So the first thing that I hope our audience, what they might take away or experience is, I hope that when you view this work, that you be willing to tilt your head, to change your perspective and recognize the multiplicities of the work and how multiplicities appear in your life. Okay. The second hope I have is that you would be curious about the beliefs, wisdom, cultures, and ancestral practices from the past, present, and possible futures. My third wish is that you would be excited about the beautiful ways that we can balance contradictions and how we can collectively cultivate wisdom to apply whatever lessons, proverbs, or sayings, or ways of being that exist in Black culture or your culture or all cultures without having to have hard rejection, erasure, or denial. My fourth wish is that the audience will experience the work and be humble. Be humble with yourself and with others as you navigate obstacles, successes, and paths of your own life, and that this piece is a reminder of the complexity of how you navigate things that seem contradictory. And lastly, be open to seeing good things where good things exist. My mom used to say to me that I'm a good team player, but I'm not for every team. And so I carry that type of lesson into my arts practice. I'm a great artist, but I'm not everybody's favorite. And so I encourage anyone, not just when you're looking at my artwork, but when you look at any piece of art, to sit with it and try and find one good thing and something that you appreciate.
And I won't repeat that now, but what I will say, Amanda, that the love you have for your mother has definitely come through here in Still Blooming. So I'm very excited to share your work. And with that, Amanda, I do want to thank you for this beautiful conversation and for the gift of your work in Still Blooming. Please tell us, where can we find you?
My personal website is www.whatsoever.ca. That's www.whatsoever, whatsoever.ca. Because my last name is too hard to spell, so that's the best place to find me.
Perfect. I'll also link that in the little bio to this podcast. And for everybody listening, you can see Amanda's work and the full exhibition, including all 9 artists, at the Gallery of Burlington from February 7th through to May 24th, and that's the Art Gallery of Burlington. We also have a digital catalog and the complete curatorial statement, the artwork, images, and more at francescadurham.com, so please check it out. And if you're a curator, a gallery owner, or an arts organization interested in community-engaged exhibitions, I encourage you to visit francescadurham.com to learn more about my curatorial practice. Thank you again for tuning in. Amanda, thank you so much for your time today. We've gone a little over, but very well worth the time in going over here today. Thank you again, Amanda. Until next time, keep blooming and stay inspired.